I barely made it, and it changed my life. She has 3 kids, and those kids are my kids. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I kind of feel like James is like more Indian dad compared to me. He's such an Indian dad. IMDb description, honestly, he's a pretty good guy.
Oh yeah. Oh, my IMDb is yes, yeah.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode on Westside Talkies podcast show. Today we have a very special guest with us. We have Kurt Smeaton with us. There's a lot to introduce about him. He's an actor, director, showrunner. He was born in Vancouver, moved to Toronto. He worked on a lot of TV shows, Kim's Convenience, Children Ruin Everything, Schitt's Creek. There are a lot more to talk about. There's a lot more shows to talk about, but today we want to focus on his experience, how TV happened for him, and what was few of his experiences working on these great shows, and his writing style, and many more things. Let's get into this show without any further delays. Firstly, Kurt, thank you so much for making time for us. We're very glad.
Yeah, Sriracha, thank you, man. I really appreciate being here. I'm glad you reached out and then poked me again because I'm bad at social media. So thank you for that. I'm really happy to be here. Sai, how's it going, man?
It's good. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for joining. And first thing, when Surakshit said you joined, I'm a great fan of your work.
Thank you.
The first thing when Surakshit said we are going to do podcast with you, I was really excited. So yeah, thank you for joining, Kurt.
Well, I hope I don't let you down. I really hope.
No.
No.
We hope we don't let you down. Actually,
We're gonna be great. This is gonna be great. We're gonna have a great time.
Yeah. Also, one other interesting thing is all of us are in 3 different time zones in 3 different countries.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kurt is in Toronto. He's in EST. I'm in Seattle. I'm in PST. And Sai is in India. He's in IST. It wasn't easy to find a time.
What time is it right now for you?
For me, it's early in the morning, 6:30.
Thank you.
It's Sunday.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for getting up.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Seattle sun is killing me. It's like there was no sun when I was setting up this laptop.
No, it's beautifully lit. This is a DOP's dream. This sun coming across, it's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Every time you lean in, it's sort of a beautiful, there you get you turn in like that. It's a beautiful bit of sun. Yeah, beautiful.
Great.
That's true.
Let's get into this podcast. Kurt, all the people who we have guests on our podcast, there's one basic thing we always like to understand: how your journey into filmmaking happened. What was the spark? How you went about from a boy from Vancouver who moved to Toronto, and then slowly ventured into writing and directing. What inspired you to be all of this?
It's a great question, and it's hopefully not a boring answer, but I was just super into TV and sitcoms, and especially sketch comedy when I was a kid. I loved watching reruns of all these sort of old sitcoms. I loved watching Cheers. I loved watching those late 70s sitcoms like Taxi and Alice, and I that was a big deal for me. And I had 2 older brothers, and I would watch TV with them and see what they laughed at and try to understand. It was my dream to make them laugh. I really wanted my older brothers laugh. And so I kind of became obsessive about it and listening to comedy albums, listening to Bob Newhart comedy albums. And but I never in my wildest dreams thought that was something that you could do. I kind of was born in Vancouver, as you said, and then my family moved to just outside of Ottawa, and I never thought, I didn't even know that you could write TV. That's something fancy people do, and it was just something I loved. So I became a bit of a person obsessed with comedy, and I would always watch. My family had this old black and white TV. And it was in the garage. It was my parents that they had when they were first living together in student housing in Edmonton. And I stole it from the garage. It barely worked, and I snuck it and put it in my closet. And I would watch Saturday Night Live. Like I'd plug it in and bring it to my bed and put my sheet over and be right beside the TV so it wouldn't be too loud. And I'd watch Saturday Night Live every Saturday night. But I never thought I could actually do stuff like that. I started like doing live comedy, and then I heard about an arts high school. So it was a high school that sort of did like drama and dance and all this sort of stuff. And they had, I didn't care about any of that. They had an improv team. And there was this thing when I was growing up, it's still around, called the Canadian Improv Games. And it was this high school improv tournament. And it was coast to coast. There were teams from all across the country. And this arts school in Ottawa had the best team. And I was like, I want to go do improv with those guys. And so I auditioned and I got into the school, and I was on probation because my marks were really bad. And
Oh,
I auditioned for this improv team, and I barely made it, and it changed my life. This teacher who was the improv teacher there, like we did practices like 4 nights a week, and then on the weekends as I got closer to the competition, and I just learned so much about generating ideas and understanding as an improviser, what is the story that I'm in? What am I in, and what does it need? What am I currently, what are the promises that I'm making to the audience currently? And how can I fulfill or subvert or change the expectations of those promises? And that was like a real boot camp for me that has lasted my whole life. And so I hundreds of hours of improv and practice and performance. And we won that year, and then we came in second a few times, but that doesn't matter. It was the hundreds of hours of practice that really changed my life and changed the way my brain worked. And then I moved to Toronto to go to theater school. I wanted to be an actor, and I wasn't a good one, as it turns out. I was not a great actor. I did do some stage stuff, but I continued to do live comedy even as I was doing, going to school here for theater. And once I graduated and started doing theater in Toronto, I was and really just drawn to doing comedy, live comedy. And it was through doing live comedy that I found someone who wanted to hire comedians and writers for their room. And this was this guy, Paul Mather, who had worked on Corner Gas, which was like a big seminal sitcom in Canada. Um, and he was doing this Men with Brooms show, which was a show about curling, based on a movie from like 15 years earlier. It wasn't like the best show, but I learned a lot on it. I learned the craft of writing on it, and my career took off there. And that's where I really learned that all that story stuff I learned in that hundreds of hours of improv was for writing. It wasn't for acting. It wasn't for live comedy. It was for writing it and generating ideas and figuring out what story you're in and what kind of twists you can put in and what you can set up earlier to pay off later. My brain was already really well attuned to that, and it translated so quickly for me. And I worked nonstop. I went from working with Men with Brooms to Mr. D, and then I just kept going from there. And it really suited me, and I loved the work. So that sort of was my way in. It was like a comedy fan, and then a guy who wanted to do live comedy, and then I kind of fell in through persisting with live comedy into to writing TV, and it worked out for me.
Very nice. This
that's
is,
cool.
yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
nice story, and I know you are a writer, so you have a
Yeah,
very nice way of putting it all
narrating
together.
skills. Yeah, exactly.
Narrator
He has a very
very
good,
well.
exactly.
You know,
So,
one second.
yeah.
Now that you're saying
Okay.
this, that like you went from one thing to a different thing, I think at least for me, it's very similar. I started
Yeah.
I started off with thinking that I wanted to be a novelist.
Okay.
Yeah, and then from novelist, I kind of jumped into uh, cinematography and then directing and writing. Like now I'm in this phase where like, okay, I want to be a director. I want to be a writer. let's
But it's
see.
all storytelling, isn't it?
It's all
Yeah,
storytelling.
You're a
exactly.
novelist. You're still like it's a lot like being a director, and it's all like being a screenplay writer. Like it's you're trying to you're just in a different medium, and what's the like? Do you find that your time attempting to be a novelist has affected the way that you want to be a filmmaker or a director? Has it had any kind of influence on, you're working as you're trying to be a novelist or you want to be a novelist, the way your brain thinks about being a novelist, has that helped in being a director at all or being a
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say yes,
yeah,
but I was like 18 or 19 when I was writing those novels.
right,
So I didn't have a lot of long-term vision at that time. I
right.
thought I wanted to create something like Game of Thrones or Harry Potter. I just wanted to
Yeah.
write like very grand scale stories.
That would have been a good idea if you had done that.
Yeah.
If you were able to create a Game of Thrones or Harry Potter, that would
But
you'd be rolling in it.
yeah, but slowly, one big shift happened was from writing fiction or something like grand scale. I slowly started enjoying this real life stories a lot more. Like, for example, something which we all can connect, we can see ourselves. I think that was the one shift which happened. Like, for example,
Yeah.
the reason why I like Children's Ruin Everything a lot is because you can see your stories in stories like this. Not just this, like, I also like a lot of sitcoms and a lot of stories where, or dramas, where you can like relate to, you can see yourself or you can see your friend in there. My mindset shifted towards this.
We actually see like when you said about yourself, like how did you come into the film industry and all. I mean, making films and all. Actually, like uh, the shows that we have seen that you have like written or directed exactly replicate those like kind of scenarios that you have actually said now.
Yeah, yeah, I
Like
think
it's kind of similar, yeah.
yeah,
It
absolutely. I
actually
think
comes from our
so.
childhood. It seems like our writing actually comes from our like people say, right? Like our writing actually comes from our experiences
Upbringing.
and all. So yeah.
Yeah, I when I first was given the opportunity to make children and everything to this point, like I was working on a show, and then the producer from that show said to Bell, like, I'm working with Kurt, you should do a blind development deal with him. So give him, we don't know what he's going to write, but just get into business with him. And they're like, okay. And then I was like, yes, I agree. And so I had developed many times before. I had been trying to make my own show, and I had created shows that I thought were funny and shows that I thought were like really different than what was on TV at the time. But when I got this development deal, I was like, what's something that it's really over the plate for me? What's something that as you're saying, like that I am right in the middle of, that I can really speak to and that I have an opinion about. And that's where Children Ruin Everything came from. I had two kids when I first pitched that show, and I had three kids by the time we started shooting it. Um, it was my
And the
experience.
series had the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was based on a sort of like the pilot was really where I was at that time, and I think like I had read this article saying that people without kids are happier and have better lives. And I was just like, oh no, I made a huge mistake. And then, but I was like, wait, I read the article and it was like all these sort of like quantifiable things and more money, more sleep. And I was like, but there are things that you can't quantify that having a family gives you. And so the show became my response to that, even though the title is Children Ruin Everything. The show helps, I hope, prove the opposite. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you guys. It's like once you're sort of find a way, even if you're doing something crazy like a Harry Potter or a Game of Thrones, those work because there are these human moments that we really believe in and that we really put ourselves into. So I think that was a game changer for me too. I completely agree with you guys.
Yeah. And I was about to ask you these two questions, and you kind of touched on it. So let's continue on it.
Sure.
The title, Children Ruin Everything. I know it's a very opposite title as you were trying to tell, or a sarcastic title, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, whose idea was it? Was yours? Like, okay, let's come up with a.
Also Kim's Convenience. Like let's talk even if you want to touch the title Kim's Convenience, actually
Yeah.
convenience has a meaning in it. Like as you say, selection like children ruin everything. Similarly, Kim's Convenience, it's like of course it might be a store's name. It also expresses the character of the Kim over there. I mean, character of
Yes.
the family over there, or the main Mr. Kim over there. So yeah, you can actually elaborate. I was just elaborating the question.
Yes. Yeah.
You
I
can go
think
ahead.
like
Yeah.
I think it was honestly I thought it was just grabby. I thought people would be like, "Whoa!" and it would sort of grab people's attention. And I had seen this as I was sort of like reading these articles about like, who people who without kids are happier. And I had sort of been looking on Reddit on the childless subreddits. And it was a refrain that I saw a lot. I saw children ruin everything. I saw that a lot. And I kind of wanted to just wear it. I just wanted to be like, okay, yeah, you know what? You have a life before and then you have kids and it completely changes. That life is ruined, but the life that you get that they replace it with is good, if not better. And that was sort of the point of the series, and we sort of get to there by the last episode. But the title really I was kind of marketing from the beginning. Like I knew that it was gonna people were gonna be like kind of shocked by it and uh, have an opinion about it right away. And then I hoped that the show was able to sort of use the title to start the discussion of like, do they, don't they? But some people got very mad at the title. And I personally had to like have a meeting with my family and just be like, hey, everyone, I've got a show that's greenlit. The title might sound a bit rough, but I love you guys, and it's a show about how having a family is amazing. And my kids understood. My kids have actually all been on the show. So yeah, but yeah, it was that show. That title was meant to sort of grab some attention and point towards what the point of the show was a little bit.
Oh, did they act?
They had recurring roles, but they were there's this character in the show that we call Disaster Mom, Rachel, and she has three
Oh.
kids, and those kids are my kids. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Smart.
Okay.
Did you
yeah.
act somewhere
Nice.
which we kind of missed?
Yeah,
No, I was
yeah, that's
supposed
what.
to be in an episode. There was a horror episode we did this year in season four. There's like a sleepover episode, and I was supposed to be in that, but I cut myself out in the editing room.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, nah, this is not working. And
As you
I
as you
don't
don't
do
like
it.
your acting.
Yeah, yeah, I told you I'm not a good actor.
No, you're
And
very
luckily the
expressive.
editor saved the day.
You are very expressive, just seeing it from this frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't perform though. It doesn't go well. But yeah, my kids all did great actually. They were all very natural and they did wonderful and I was happy to have them there. It was really nice to be on set. In production, it's so difficult because the hours are so long and it's so exhausting and I just don't see my family that much. So to have them in the show once in a while was just nice to have them on set all day and go visit them in their trailer and go to the snack counter with them and like be on set with them. It was really nice.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to direct your kids compared to Viv and Felix?
I
The
don't
kids are
think
like, Dad, go. I'll do whatever I want.
no, they took it very seriously. They were very like they learned their lines and they were very, they wanted to do a good job. And
You have to
so
say this because it's on record.
no, they really did. They really did. And they didn't
Okay.
have as much to do, but they did a great job. In fact, my daughter is in that horror episode, and she's great in it. She's hilarious. I think she did a great job. But
Wonderful.
Viv or Michaela and Logan, the two young actors who play Felix and Viv, are very, very special performers. And we knew that from the very first time we auditioned them. Michaela was 4 years old when we auditioned, and it was during the pandemic,
Oh.
so it was over Zoom. And she did her audition, and it was good. And then I improvised a scenario with her just over Zoom, and she was making choices and reacting honestly and like the way a kid would, and I just couldn't believe it. And it was the same with Logan. He was always very prepared and he knew everything and he was alive in the moment. And they were also just a joy to have on set. We were very lucky. I don't think we could have done the show if we didn't have kids that were that good.
Yeah,
We really
exactly.
lucked out. It was great.
I totally agree. And one more thing on the same lines, because we're talking about the characters in the movie. James.
Yeah.
I know Megan is part Indian in the show also. Like her character itself is like part Indian, and he is like from Canada, James.
Yeah.
This is just my opinion. I kind of feel like James is like more Indian dad compared to Megan. He's such an Indian dad. Like, Indian dads are like they can't say no to their kids. Uh, they kind of put themselves out to do like anything. I know overall every dad could be like that, but I kind of find him to be like more rooted, more Indianish.
That's amazing. I'd love to hear that. Yeah, I think, pardon me. I mean, I've actually known Aaron a long time. He's an old friend of mine, and he and Megan had such great chemistry. But that character was always meant to be like that, and so even before we knew, like I knew I wanted a diverse couple. I wanted a sort of a mixed couple, but I didn't know what that was going to look like until we auditioned, and so then we got Megan was just so good. And it was funny because initially in the pilot script, the parents were like they looked like me, like they were kind of a little bit overweight, like just people who look tired and have sort of there was a whole storyline originally about the dad sort of having body issues and
Oh,
but Aaron and Megan are both beautiful, but they were the best. They were the best performers. When I first heard Megan's name brought up, I was like looking at her. I was like, she's too pretty. I don't think she can do it. And then she auditioned, and she was so good. And then Aaron, the same thing, just so alive. But he also has a six pack, so I had to I had to change some of the stories once I cast them. But yeah, it's he's that's the kind of dad I think I am. Like I overthinking, trying to sort of like make a life lesson out of things, but also I can't, I don't want to be an obstruction to my kids. And yeah, I really saw myself in there too.
Nice. I was about to ask how similar your character was to him, and you already answered.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a biography. Like it really,
Yeah, I know, I understand.
but it is a little bit like me. There were a lot of parents in the writing room, and we were talking to a lot of parents and reading up on what parents were going through, and really trying to sort of put everyone's, experiences in there. It was kind of, and then we of course had non-parents in there too, so it was fun to, for those people to sort of hear us parents talk about like. Oh no, we get really annoyed by our own kids. So you can really sort of be super frustrated with your own kid and not be able, have to leave the room. You can't even talk to them, and they're like, oh, it's like yeah, it's you're living with someone. It's you go through all the emotions. But yeah, it was a really great experience to sort of write for all those actors. That Megan, Aaron, Logan, Michaela. It was so fun to write for them. They were so alive and great in those roles.
Very nice. Aaron is my favorite out
nice.
of all the
Uh,
characters.
Who's that?
cool, cool.
Aaron,
Yeah,
James.
and
Yeah. He's amazing, man. He's an old dear friend of mine, and I was excited that we got to work together. Ennis is an old friend of mine too. And as you can, I wrote his name is Ennis, and I wrote the role for him. But yeah.
Very nice.
so from this, however, you're talking about your writing process, right? So I just wanted to elaborate that question. So how would be your writing process, especially like I used to observe when I'm watching these shows. I used to observe this particular thing when uh, like parents have a specific character. You have written a specific character for the both of the parents, and there will be some traits like as if these kids were really born. I mean, of course, that chemistry should be brought on the story or written in the story, so that everyone gets connected. But how did you even like get that specific chemistry? I mean, uh, these are just kids, but they have like when in some specific scenes or like there where we can actually see some traits of the parents in the children. They won't be having like a specific character as their kids. So like how did you bring this thing into the children, like because they're just 4 or 5 and they can actually show those emotions or like those traits their parents actually have. And uh, like if we see it behind the screen, these kids are not the real kids of these guys, right?
Yeah, no,
And
they're
they
really playing
actually,
characters. Yeah.
yeah, they're just playing characters and they actually brilliantly portray that emotions these parents do. So
Uh,
how do you write that? Like how do you write that? How do you how do you make those children act? Like it's brilliant. How did you do that?
well, thank you, and I wish I could take more credit for it.
Oh,
I'll take
You can
most of the
take
credit
all
for
the
it,
credit.
I can't take all the credit. I think initially we really wanted to focus on the parents. We're like, this is a show where we care about. It's not everyone in the family that we're following. We're following the parents. It's their journey. How are they parenting? How are they feeling about their kids? Emotional journeys or whatever. And so at first we really didn't know, like we knew the kids were good, but we weren't sure how much to give them. And then as we went along, we just realized they could handle it and they were able to make it feel real. And so we always had planned for Megan to have like she's got a temper and she's a bit fiery, and we knew that we wanted Viv to be like that too. And we knew that we wanted Logan's character, Felix, to be a bit more sensitive and to be, um, a bit more. I don't know. He's just more sweet.
Rational, I would say.
What's that?
yeah,
Rational.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so as we could see they could handle it, we started putting it in more. And we definitely, like, side to your point, we definitely wanted that. We wanted to see the kids. We wanted to see the parents in the kids. We wanted to see that, like, those traits expressed as well, so that felt more like a family. And so that they were just we lucked out. Like I again, they were we definitely wrote to it, but we only did that once we saw that they could handle it. There's a scene at the end of season 2 where Michaela, it's like a kind of a dramatic scene in this comedy where Michaela has been acting out and they're like, "You can't do that." And she says, "I don't want to. I hate myself when I do that." And it's like this, like really emotional thing that this kid says. She's like 6 at the time, and like on set, we were like crying, and even in the editing room, and I still get a little bit emotional even talking about it. But she performed it so well, and so we were really lucky that we had written the show that was supposed to be about the parents, but we had these great weapons. These kids could do anything. And so we didn't need them to do a lot. And then we were just opened up the show more to sort of include what they were able to do. And so that's just on the floor. Like when you write a script and you're like, you can see what they can do and you can go in and ask them to do a bit more on the floor and like, yeah, follow that impulse or whatever. And then in the editing room, just sort of bringing it up a bit more. And then the next year, when you're writing those scripts, you know what you're working with, so you write to what your actors can do. When you're the first season of a show, you write these scripts, but before you're shooting it, you don't really know how it's gonna go. And then you're on the set, and you're like, oh, they're really good at this, and like this thing that we thought we wanted to do, it's maybe not working as well. And so by the time like you had your ideas of the characters, but the actors really decide what those characters are going to be. And then if you're receptive to it in a season 2, you can sort of be like, all right, I'm going to now not give them the stuff that I didn't think that worked really well. And I'm going to really focus on the stuff that's over the plate for them. And I'm going to find ways to make stories where they get to do that more and that sort of highlight those traits or whatever. So that was a really big part of like really examining what you've got in a first season, and you get if you're lucky enough to get a second season, really understanding how you can make the show better. And that was hard to learn how to do, but yeah, I was so lucky to have such a great cast all the way through.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think both the kids acted
Right.
amazingly well,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're going to have a long career.
yeah, yeah.
I
Of
hope
course they
so.
do.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah,
they keep doing it.
And I want to go back to your first gig. I know getting your first gig is not easy. It's never easy. I think be it in Indian films, Telugu films, or English or TV, getting your first gig is always tough. So how were you able to crack that first gig, and how did you feel about it? Like what exactly happened?
Yeah.
How were you able to crack it?
Well, I mean, the first gig that I'm going to talk about, like I did manage to get a gig working on like a kids cooking show. It was like it's called Taste Buds or something like that, and I worked on that. I was actually fired from that show. But the first real sitcom show that I got was really because I had been writing some radio comedy, some sketch comedy, and I was in a sketch comedy group, and I was an improviser, and I had been sort of traveling to different improv festivals, in particular one in Edmonton, with this improv group in Edmonton called Rapid Fire, which was, for a little while became almost like a second home for me. I was there a few times a
Okay.
year. I love those guys, still do. And like I said, Paul Mather, who had worked on Corner Gas, knew that he's been given this show Men with Brooms, and he was an improviser. He had started out as an improviser and a comedian, and he was asking around to different festivals and different improv communities, like who's a funny person that we could bring into the room. He did no writing experience necessary, and my name came up. So I went and I had an interview, and I just chatted with Paul, and we made each other laugh, and we got along, and it was pretty quick. He was just like, "Yeah, okay, I got a call the next week. You're hired, and you're gonna be writing on this show, and then you're gonna go to Winnipeg while it's shooting, and
Oh,
finish putting it there." And it was, I had been trying. I had an agent. I had been trying, but this was really the first job interview that I had to be a writer, and I was lucky enough to get it, and um, it was a real great learning experience because he had done so many years on Corner Gas. I had all this idea about story structure and about character, but he really taught me the nuts and bolts of writing for TV, act outs and even just formatting a script and stuff like that. He was willing to bring in people with no experience who just had comedy experience and he thought like I'll teach them how to do all the nuts and bolts stuff. And I will add to that point, like I find that in other countries, I don't know what it's like in India, but in the US, in Australia for sure, the UK, the live comedy to TV writer pipeline is a big deal. Like it's a thing that happens. And like a lot of people who are in live comedy, stand-ups or improv or sketch people go on to be TV writers. And I find that doesn't happen on the
no,
comedy.
no, no.
It's much,
It doesn't happen here much. No, no, no,
we
no?
will explain
no. It
about
doesn't.
the Indian writing style in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like to
yeah,
hear.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I had this question where like, how come you guys manage like having different directors for different episodes? Because
Writers too, not just directors.
yeah, rare writers as well. Because and you maintain that organicness in the whole series. How do you do that? Because every director has a different vision, right? In India, we don't do that. We usually have one director for the whole show, or like one director for the whole film. That's it, and one writer. Like there might be a writer or there might not be a writer, because most of the times, like Indians, how they do is like if they write the film, they direct the film. That's it. There will be a there are very less chances or very less instances where there will be a different writer. Of course, there might be a dialogue writer for the film or the series, but usually this thing happens here. But how do you guys even manage with different directors? and different writers for the same series?
Well, I think like in film, classically it's the director's medium. Like the director really is in charge of the entire vision of it. Whereas in TV, it's meant more to be the writer showrunner. The showrunner is the person who ultimately is the curator for the series, and you know, it's not just different directors. You have like from season to season, you might have different wardrobe people, or you might have a different.
Oh,
There's all these different departments that you're trying to sort of have a cohesive vision with, and that's the showrunner's job. And so the directors come in, and especially after a first season, it's a machine that's up and running. You're coming in, you're a guest coming in, and you're directing, and we want your input, and we want you to put your thing on it. But like, this is the show. This is the kind of shots we do. This is the schedule we have. These are the actors that we have. There's only so much leeway you can do. And like sometimes, a director will be like, I want to bring in this piece of equipment for this shot. You're like, okay, you can have a fancy shot. You got a little bit of leeway to bring in a thing to do a special thing on this particular move or whatever. But we have our lenses already. We have our director of photographer who's there the whole time, and we have our
mm.
showrunner who's there the whole time. And they really are the ones that are in charge of making sure that it's cohesive and all feels like the same thing. And then once in a while, like we did a horror episode, and so it's still our show, but we change a little bit to be more like a horror show. The lighting's darker. We have, maybe the shots are a little bit different, but mostly it's you have those people that are in charge of keeping keeping that look cohesive.
Oh, very nice.
So
But
we can
typically, you would
actually
have
say
like
showrunner is the director of the film, like a director of the series, like in an Indian way. If we say
Yeah,
like showrunner is the main director of the film.
yeah, and to be clear, when I'm show running, when I'm the showrunner and the producer writer on set, like there is a director, and I'm not telling them what to do, but
Okay.
but we have a meeting beforehand. We have like a tone meeting, and I'll go through and we'll talk about like what these scenes mean, and then they also speak with the director of photographer, and the director of photographer is like, these are the lenses we use, these are the sizes we use, this is the way we've been doing things. And directors who are TV directors, they know that their guest directors are coming in. They don't want to change. They want to fit in with the look of the show. And so you don't really have very many people who are coming in trying to change things. It might be, sometimes you're lucky and you have a unique situation. And you're like, oh, well, we've never done this before, so really whatever you do is going to be fine. And like we did an episode that took place almost entirely in a restaurant, and it was just James and Astrid trying to have a night where they don't talk about the kids, and they can't help it. They keep talking about the kids, and it was a very different kind of episode. And we had um, a director who came in and was a new director and was able to put his own spin on it, which was great. Just
very
Justin
nice.
Whittle.
Uh,
Justin Whittle.
but
Nice.
but one more question on the same lines. So you said there's a showrunner. Obviously, there are directors who are coming and going, and you said there are like DOPs, which you typically like to keep the same person for the entire show. But
Yeah.
there could be instances where you would get like different cinematographers. So what does an executive producer do in this uh, entire management of roles?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because executive producer is a stakeholder in the show. So that might be a writer like me. I'm an executive producer. It might be the creator of the show. It might be a person who works is the president or high up in the production company. All right. So New Metric Media, Mark Montefiore is an executive producer. Sometimes people get as part of their deal, they are an executive producer. They are given that title. And Megan was an executive producer on the show.
Oh,
Um, and so
Yeah,
she weighed in on casting, and she looked at edits and gave us notes. And anytime there was anything big that was happening, she weighed in. But she was not obtrusive, and her thoughts were always really smart and good. And so executive producer is kind of a moving target. Mark Montefiore, from New Metric Media, was very hands-on as an executive producer in this first season because it's a big deal for his company to have the show greenlit. And once he saw that I was able to do it, he really sort of was there when I needed him in the subsequent seasons. There was a big problem. I'm like, Mark, what do I do? Can you get in here and help me here? And his job was really to sort of help get the show financed, find a place for it to to shoot, find a studio for it. And so executive producer is like it's an important person, but it's not necessarily a person who's involved in the day-to-day overseeing of the show. It's a stakeholder who might say like I don't want this to be in the show, and then you have to figure out a way to resolve that conflict or do what they want. But really, the day-to-day stuff, the big player is the showrunner, and then you've got your DOP who's really in charge of the look of the show for the duration of their time there.
Oh, very nice. Does an executive producer in the movie world also kind of have the same role? I mean, like, let's say from what we know about movies which are directed in India. So there's like an director, obviously. There's a guy who's the producer, who is like the guy who invests money in. Then he would hire an executive producer who would be the person who would ensure that all the dates of everybody, of all the actors are like on time. All the actors are on the sets. Everything on the set is like on time, looking good. Director is the one who obviously what a director does. Like he focuses on his day-to-day activities, ensuring that everything goes smooth. But executive producer is the one who would handle the scheduling to ensuring the shoot happens on time, kind of a person, along with the budget management.
Yeah, I mean, we have like what you would call a production manager and a line producer. So the line producer is you have that. It's like the money
Yeah.
they decide, and then the production manager might sort of have that's more about like which departments are getting what money. Executive producer, I'm not sure. Like it feels like a first AD would be like making sure the scheduling's happening, and then I think like we have a producer. We had Allison Richards is a producer for the seasons 2 through 4. She's not an executive producer, but she did that. Like that was her, and she was a creative producer. She was a partner for me, and she was at every production meeting, and I would go and handle the creative stuff, and then she would go and figure out how we could get that farm or how we could find money to do this thing. And so that in TV that might be a producer, maybe in film it's an executive producer, but the title executive producer is one that can be also negotiated, right? There are people like it might be that someone was like, I'm the one who brought all these people together, and for that I would like this amount of money and an executive producer credit. And people are like, okay,
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
So like you'll see a film and there might be 5 or 6 executive producers. And I'm not saying
Makes sense.
that to sort of like take away the importance of those people, but in terms of like the day-to-day management, it's not always just because you're an executive producer doesn't mean necessarily that you're really steering the ship in a day-to-day sort of way.
The showrunner does it for TVs.
Yeah, and like there'll be like an executive producer who is like absolutely doing that, but that might be like a studio head or like a production company head or something like that. So it's just one of those things. Like sometimes the title producer is confusing to people because some producing titles and some producing jobs have really specific functions, and like I'm the line producer. I'm dealing with the budget. I'm making sure that there's enough money for this and that. And then there's executive producer, which is like maybe very powerful, but also maybe just a person who is like, I came up with the title, and I want or whatever. And sometimes there are people who are like, you're creating a show, and you're like, it would be so great to have this actor. If we could have this actor, it would really make a huge difference. And maybe you can't afford to pay that actor what they would normally get. And so they might be like, well, make me an executive producer, and then I can have some sort of say in some sort of control over this movie a little bit. Maybe I'll get some points in the back end or whatever. And so there's lots of ways to get to be an executive producer or a producer on a show. So I probably did not clarify anything, but
No, I think
No, we actually
Whatever.
got like a kind of good information from this. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
And and from the same thing that you're actually saying, we in India we don't have like these production companies. Like actually, I think in in US and like in the Western countries, we have these production companies where like a set of people who actually take care of the production of the film. I just wanted to go a little bit deep into this because we just have a specific producer who produces the film, and he will be the producer for the film. That's it. There won't be a separate person for different films. Like of course we'll get let's say there is Warner Brothers. Uh, there will be people who actually started Warner Brothers, but they won't be the producers for the film. So I
Right.
just wanted to, yeah,
Yeah, it's there are different ways to look at it. Maybe in the US they're mostly it's more like studios. You're
yeah,
talking about studios, or maybe you're talking about distribution companies, like maybe New Line is distributing the film or whatever it is. And so there's for TV here in Canada, like if I have an idea, a broadcaster isn't a studio. So they're like, we will air your show and we can give you some money for your show. Like we will buy a license fee, give you a license fee and pay this money. But like they don't have the wherewithal to sort of hire all the people and find the places to shoot. And like, that's not what they do. And so that's why you need a production company. It's weird where we're like, we have our broadcasters, which are also the people who own the airwaves. So it's like it's Bell who owns Bell, but also has
yeah,
CTV. And so we have a broadcaster and the people who own the airwaves, and then we have our production company. So like I personally, I could hire a producer, but like the accounting and like the like creating a business that only exists for a year to make this season of television and like hiring all those people and like it's a huge undertaking that like would I can't do that. Like it's really important to have a production company that whose job it is to do that and have all that infrastructure, have all the contacts for crews and for studios to shoot at. Like I mean, studio spaces. I mean, that's the way it works for TV here. For film, I don't know. I'm not in the film world, but I imagine it's similar, where it's like you get a producer and they will do that hiring because it's not the same kind of you're going to do a however many day shoot, whereas I'm going to be shooting for months, and then hopefully again the next year. Like we're going to tear those sets down and store them, and then we're going to bring them back and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not as familiar with the film world, but I think maybe distribution is maybe when those kinds of production companies come in, but I don't know.
Got it. But also, I see your Insta post where you were like, we had to shoot like one entire episode in 3 days for the season four. I know any movie anywhere in the world, we're always on tight deadlines because one extra day of shoot is going to cost a lot of money. So they try to keep it as concise as possible. But how like 3 days, I kind of feel it is very tight. But how about rest of the seasons? Were you getting like just a couple of days more for each episode? How does it work?
I mean, I think the way to look at it is a half hour, like a comedy in the US is usually like 5 days an episode.
Okay.
And
oh, okay,
I've never worked on anything that has more than 4 days an episode. Maybe,
Okay.
and we block shoot, right? So it's
Hmm.
like in the US, you'll shoot an episode in 5 days. And maybe they might start block shooting now that the budgets are starting to come down a bit, but we were shooting like 4 episodes at a time, right? So, um, or sometimes 3 episodes at a time. And so you've got these like you're shooting a bunch of things at the same time, and you're hoping that buys you a bit more time. But in the last season, we just had less money, and the reason for that is that everything gets more expensive. Everyone gets a bump, everyone gets a little bit more money, and maybe Bell wants to kick in a little bit less money, and so you're sort of in the situation where the only thing you can do is to just truncate the time. and it became, it was every episode in season four it was 3 days per episode. And without, I mentioned Allison Richards before, and New Metric, Mark and the team at New Metric, if we hadn't over the 4 seasons created a very cohesive, a very sort of well-oiled machine to make this TV show, it would not have been possible. It was almost impossible to do. I don't think I would ever want to try it again. it was like on this show, 3.5 days we had, and you think, well, that's not that much more, but if you're doing blocks of four, that's 2 more days per block, right? So like it
Yeah.
just really, and then we had stuff in the final couple of weeks that we had power outages, and so we lost a half a day, and then we lost an hour another day, and the time just kept shrinking and shrinking, and then the last day there's nowhere else to punt anything. We went till about 3 in the morning. You're in quadruple overtime. You're like, there's
Hectic.
nothing to do. There's nowhere else to punt anything to. These sets come down tomorrow, so we got to just finish this. So it was tough, and it's a real testament to the crew that we had, an amazing crew, who really busted their butt and who cared about the show and cared about making it good despite this lack of time. So I appreciate that. But yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. Also, I really like your post about the season finale also. I agree with you. I think there are so many shows which I used to like, which I used to watch. I watch a lot of sitcom, by the way. Like abruptly ended, and at least you got to close your show with a very nice finale episode. Uh, I know you might have started loving all of these characters a lot, and it might be tough for you to like let them go and move on to something else. But like, how was it moving on?
What a great question. Thanks, man. It was when we finished at 3 o'clock in the morning, that last thing, all the cast and the crew hugged it out, and like Megan and Aaron were, in tears and saying goodbye, and gave speeches to thank everyone. I didn't feel much then because I knew that I still had I still had months of
First,
on this show every day. And it wasn't really until I, I have my files on my computer of all the stuff that I'm working on, and I have like a current sort of like roster. And then when that stuff's done, if it like doesn't go through or I finish with it, I move it to a folder of past shows. And when I moved Children and Everything to the past show, that was the first time I cried. I was like,
Uh,
oh, I don't get to because even in the editing room, I'm still writing some of the voiceovers. There's voiceovers, so I can rewrite them once we have the final edit. I'm like, oh, it might make it more sense if the voiceover goes like this. And so I'm still tweaking and writing. And it was when there was nothing else for me to do on the show, and it was like, I was never going to get to, that's when it hit me that I was never going to get to do it again. I was never going to get to, write more stories about this and work with these people again. So that it wasn't until it was kind of months later that I was alone in
okay.
my office in this room, just like. But I'm really proud of the final season, and I'm in particular proud of that final episode. And I think it was. You're right, man. It felt so good to be able to sort of write a final season and just put everything else that we wanted to do out there, and then find an ending for the show and execute it. It felt great, and not a lot of people get to do that, so I was really grateful.
Very nice. I felt
nice.
you when you're like moving it to the past shows folder.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel it.
yeah, yeah. That was the toughest part. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, what next? What's coming up next? The exciting part.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I had not been working on anything else. I had not been sort of like, the smart thing to do is to have some stuff brewing and percolating so that when you finish, you've got these other things coming up. I didn't do any of that. I've just been really having a great time actually, starting from scratch and starting from the beginning and finding out what other kinds of stories that I want to tell, what are things that I can feel myself in, that I can speak from experience about, or at least I can bring um, uh, some real relationships to. And I think it's been really fun this time around because everything I learned in the 4 years of doing Children and Everything, and all the other shows that I've worked on, now really allows me to sort of, when I'm creating something, to think years into the future. Like, is this the kind of thing, like, where's this going to go? Is this the kind of thing I'm going to want to live with for 4 years? Are these the characters that I want to work on for 4 years? And I've got a few things that I can't talk about yet, but I'm going to start pitching real soon. And I'd love to come back and talk with you guys once I'm in
Sure.
development with the thing, and we can chat about it then. But there are things coming. It was a bit slow at first, but now there's a few things in the fire, and I'm excited to get started.
Cool,
Very
cool.
nice,
We actually
very
wanted
nice.
to join. We actually wanted to join your story discussion. Like when you're writing, we just wanted to pitch in our ideas too, if you accept.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, let's keep in touch, and when I've got some more solid things to announce, it would be great to come and talk some more and chat about what I'm up to.
Yeah,
Definitely, I think
thanks.
that would be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I don't have any other
And
questions. Kurt, Sai, you got any?
I do like.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, it's the last
Sorry.
minute. Sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I just have last two questions. It might be quite silly, but yeah. So you guys usually do the sync sound, or like how does it work? Like you dub in the studios later?
For which parts?
Like for anything. Like do you do the sync sound on set recording of the sound, or like you guys
Yeah, yeah.
do
We
it?
s- we sync. I mean, we record. We have obviously our labs, and we have our booms there, and we sync there, and then we can go in and clean it up and do any ADR in
Mm.
post. And I know a lot of comedies, when they're in the editing room, they add jokes in ADR. They're like, "Oh, it'd be funny if this." We'll just cut to the back of them, and we'll go and have them add this line. And we didn't do a lot of that. We rarely did that, but it was more the voiceovers that we would change
Mm.
to an ADR. But no, we did. Sound was live, and there was like. We didn't always have like a real studio. And there was one place that we're in that was like we were using as a studio, and there was like a really loud hum noise. And it was like
Yeah.
on day two, I'm like, is this I was like listening to the dailies, and I was like, that's in every scene? And the equipment, they like, the technology they have now, and the ability to sort of isolate a sound and remove it, they're like, don't worry about it. It's like, don't worry about it. I'm hearing it every take. I'm like watching the dailies, and I'm just hearing ooh. But yeah, it's kind of amazing what kind of tools they have now to make things sound amazing.
Exactly. And my final question is like, might be kind of a little bit elaborated, but it's like, how do you? It goes back to your writing process. Like, how do you even write like emotions and like emotional scenes or emotions and comedy in one specific track? Because like, uh, usually they don't usually mix up, right? They both don't mix up easily. So they both are different emotions.
I can
But
explain the question in a better way.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah,
what he's
No,
going
yeah.
to ask. You got
yeah,
this? You
yeah.
got the question?
I think I get it. I think, like,
Okay.
how can you have both comedy and then like these sincere sort of like emotional moments in the same episode, right? That
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And not in the same episode. Sometimes there are these situations when they both come in the same scene.
yes.
Yeah.
I
So
think like for me, like, I wanted the show to feel like it was real, and it was like it wasn't, some comedies, and I want to write these comedies too, and I love these comedies. You're never really, it's just funny. You're never really caring too deeply about the characters. They're just saying funny stuff, and crazy things can happen to them that wouldn't necessarily happen in real life. And you're like, that's just what this show is. It's fun. We wanted the show to feel real, and so. in order for that to happen, if you're going to deal with raising kids, there are things that happen that suck and you feel bad about. And we didn't want to like shrug those off because it wouldn't feel real. These are parents that care about their kids. And so we always wanted to tell the story that was sort of felt true to us, but we always kept in mind that it was a comedy. So we try to find a way to undercut anything that was like too sweet or too emotional. Like what's something that feels real, but that we can bring in right away that can be a joke. Um, if I was really smart, I would have an example of that off the top of my head, but I don't. But that's sort of the feeling that we always wanted. We wanted to have real emotions, real sort of the way you really feel about your kids, and then always keeping in mind it's a comedy. Always find a way to, sit in that moment, but then get out of it right away and have some fun again.
Right.
Cool.
I,
Yeah.
I
Nice.
guess something like this. But overall, I think this entire episode is like came out very well, Kurt. We are very happy we spoke with you. It was fun
Actually, yeah.
and also very informative at the same time. For people like us who do not come from like at least who are not like born or like we did not grow up in countries like US or Canada. We moved when we were like adults. We do not know a lot about how it actually shoot happens for like in movies here. And because like we do other jobs full time, we don't do movies full time. Like whatever we do about movies is like in the short films on the weekends. So we have like our own idea or assumptions on how it works. I think it cleared up a lot.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think you'll find that it's on set is very similar to you on the weekends. It's just that there are more people.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me. There are more mouths to feed at lunch, but there are more opinions coming in. There are more things that can go wrong because there's so many different people working on stuff. But it's really the same feeling. I think you'll find. I find that. I find that like as I'm working on bigger sets and smaller sets, it's all the same thing. It's just that now there's more people and there's there are more. You might have one person doing wardrobe, props, makeup, and lunch, but and then on a bigger set, you've got different people for all that. But it's the same feeling. But I'm happy to. I really enjoyed this chat, and I would love to come back and chat again
Thank
when
you.
I have more to talk about. So let's do
Yeah,
that.
definitely. We'll come
Yeah,
back
yeah,
and
sure,
chat about.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
for audience whoever haven't seen Children and everything, go check it out. You'll definitely love it. Especially if you're parents, you'll love it. And also if you're planning to be parents, this is something which you should definitely watch.
Yeah,
You will
thank
know
you.
what
Yeah,
kids
check it
do.
out.
And also check Kurt's IMDb description.
Yeah, Smeat Potatoes is my name.
No,
I know.
he has his IMDb description. Honestly, he's a pretty good guy.
Oh yeah. Oh, my IMDb is yes, yeah, written by me. It says right there.
You are definitely a very good guy.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
Yeah, Brexit
Thank you.
Thrive. Thank you, Sai. Thank you so much, man. Really nice to meet you guys, and we'll be in touch.
Yep,
Thank
definitely.
you.
We'll
Yeah,
stay in
thank you.
touch.
Thanks a lot, Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode. Stay tuned to our channel. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.